Welcome back to the Go podcast, man. Episode 86, NBA playing playoffs getting started tonight, man. Got two games on tonight, recording Tuesday. Got the West Coast games on tonight. Starting it off, man. Got the Lakers and the Pelicans tonight, 7:30. It's about a half hour away. And then you got Warriors, Kings, Heat, Sixers tomorrow, and Hawks, Bulls getting the playing started. We're also going to touch on, the set matchups in the playoffs as well. So we might as well take it from the top, man. Lakers, Pelicans. Go ahead and let me know, your thoughts on this matchup.
Uh, yeah, I already know you're gonna. So let me just get out of the way. Oh, my Lakers, my Warriors, this and that. But the Lakers and Pelicans, I think this is gonna be a good matchup. We just saw them play the either the last game or second last game of the season, and I think it could be similar. I'm gonna pick the Lakers in this matchup just because of the size that the Lakers bring. You got AD and Bron; those two guys are healthy right now. LeBron on a heater; he's been playing lights out down the stretch here. And the Pelicans, they've been working Brandon Ingram back, and the big thing for me is how well is Zion going to play because he's kind of like the catapult to this roster and this team. If Zion's able to get it going in the paint, he's able to, get that little mid range going, get to the foul line. And they got shooters, they got guys all around him. You look at CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy, these guys that are lights out from three. Brandon Ingram can create his own shot. But if you look back to the last game they played, LeBron and AD made it really tough for Zion to get going. And if Zion really can't get going, then I think that's going to be a big question mark. And the Lakers offensively, they've been up and down, but Darvin Ham seems like they finally got there lined up. Rui Hachimura, those guys are playing minutes. D'Lo, he's been stepping it up. He's been scoring really well since the trade deadline. And, the D'Lo rumors and stuff like that. So I think the Lakers, and I wanted to ask you this because there's been stuff going around saying, oh, should the Lakers like intentionally lose this game or like rest LeBron or whatever to play in the final playing game and then have to go against the one seed, the Thunder, instead of playing the two seed Nuggets. So I want to hear what you think about that. But I personally think the Lakers win this game against the Pelicans, and I think they should try to win this game. So yeah, that's what I think. But I want to know what you think. You think the Lakers should lose this first matchup to try to get matched up with the Thunder, or do you think they should just try to win this game against the Pelicans and then play the Nuggets, who you know they just can't beat?
Obviously,
It's close, but they
yeah.
just can't beat them.
Obviously, bro, this is the NBA. Any given night, any given day, you could beat an opponent, especially in a one game win or go home scenario. So I'm gonna say no, they don't want to lose this game, put their backs up against the wall. Ideally, yeah, you wouldn't want to play the Nuggets, Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, that two-man, so special and dangerous, especially in the playoffs. We've seen what they're able to do. The Lakers played them last year in the playoffs, and they almost had it a few games. Second half meltdowns really cost the Lakers last year in the playoffs against the Nuggets and allowed the Nuggets to go ahead and end up winning that NBA championship. So, yeah, the Thunder, great team. Obviously, the question with them is, playoff experience. No one on that roster has really been there. You got SGA, who's, I believe he jumped to second on the MVP kind of voting board, according to the NBA, but I still wouldn't want to do it. You put your backs up against the wall. Say you go against, Golden State, Steph Curry, he catches fire. Now you're sitting at home watching the playoffs from the couch. So I'm gonna go ahead and say no. But the thing is, I think they will be playing in that winner go home matchup. I believe the Pelicans get it done tonight, man. You mentioned Brandon Ingram. He played last game, obviously coming back from the injury, maybe a minutes restriction, load management, whatever you want to call it. But you add Brandon Ingram back to that team. You got CJ McCollum. You mentioned Zion, kind of getting locked up last game due to the size that the Lakers have, not only on the inside, but the perimeter as well. I think the Pelicans kind of just get an upset win here. It's in New Orleans, Lakers on the road in front of that home crowd. I think the Pelicans get it done. I believe they were in the play-in last year, and I don't want to say they won, but I recall them being in that play-in last year. BI and
Can't
CJ.
remember.
Um, I think it came down to the wire and they lost actually. I think they get it done here. A lot riding, for Zion finally playing, majority of the season. Something he's not been able to do, being that number one overall pick, being as hyped as he was. I think he's got a little chip on his shoulder. So, and the Lakers, I think they get that ideal matchup that you were talking about, not being able, um, you're not playing against, that Denver Nuggets team, and they're able to get that Oklahoma City Thunder. I think the Pelicans shocked the world tonight, but obviously I think it's going to be a good matchup. The depth of the big man on the Pelicans is an issue. I mean, they got Jonas Valanciunas. He was more offensive player his whole career. He can get it done on the defensive side of the ball. And then you got Cody Zeller behind him, not really something you have to worry about as a primary ball handler driver heading to the rim. So I would say, the Lakers do have the matchup on paper with AD and everything like that, but I think they're able to squeak one out at home. It's going to be a tight one, but I think the Pels get it done. And no, you
Well,
don't
we'll
want to lose
see.
that
We'll
game. I
see.
mean,
No,
people are
yeah, I mean, in terms of the Lakers have had a lot of success against the Warriors, especially when they have AD playing. But we saw down the stretch, I believe like last week, whatever, when they played the Warriors at LA, like even though Anthony Davis was out, were they still going to beat them? Because I think they hit like a career franchise record or whatever. It was like 26 threes. They just couldn't miss from deep. And when you got guys like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, arguably the greatest shooting backcourt of all time. Draymond was like, I think that was the game he was 5 for 5 in the first half from threes. So you got shooters like that over there in Golden State. You know what they do? They shoot the ball. So Lakers and their shooting, that's always been a question mark of them scoring. Maybe they can get, a shot out of the gym there. And then when you look at the Kings, if the Kings have done winning and they play the Lakers, we all know the story at this point. Anthony Davis, just can't be Sabonis in his career. Always seems like the Kings play really well against the Lakers. They match up. So that would be a really tough matchup. I think the Pelicans is the best chance for the Lakers to get into the playoffs in terms of playing. So I think they got to just take advantage of this matchup in this first game and then just hope for the best in the playoffs. And like you mentioned, in the conference finals last year, the games were all close against the Nuggets. It was just they got out executed down the stretch, couldn't shoot the ball as well in the fourth quarter. Like you mentioned, some second half woes. So, I mean, the Lakers, they're a team that can kind of size wise hang around with the Denver Nuggets, and they have some of the players that can, maybe give them an offensive boost to help. But I just think when you look at the Denver Nuggets, man, and the way they run their system and Nikola Jokic and how he's able to impact the game, I think it showed, and pretty much like you mentioned in the Western Conference Finals, and then even in the finals where against the Heat, where like down the stretch when it really matters in the fourth quarter, Nikola Jokic just does so much, gets so many of his guys open looks and gets them in positions they need to be in. So yeah, if I'm the Lakers, I would rather just win this game, get in the playoffs, and then if you're able to beat the Nuggets somehow, some way in the first round, like at that point you're thinking like championship, bro. Because like I feel like you think you can match up against any other team better than the Nuggets, and I mean that goes with any team. If you're able to knock off the Nuggets, that's like the best team in the league. You feel me? So yeah, I definitely think the Lakers got to get in right here, or they might be sitting out, like you said.
And I mean, all of the West would really love the Nuggets to get bounced in this one. I mean, opens the door
100%.
up in the West. Big time, man. Speaking of it, Warriors, Kings in Sacramento, Northern California, across um the Bay, I sort of say. The Sacramento Kings light the beam. You know, you mentioned the Sabonis AD matchup. They don't want that to happen. Sabonis has had AD's number his whole career. Who do you like in this one?
In this one, I think I would lean the Kings, or it'd be a lot better matchup if they had some of their guys healthy. But Herder and Malik Monk are both out, and like looking at that roster, depending on how you feel about Keegan Murray, that's like their third and fourth option offensively. So I would say the Warriors, man, just because of health. Like at this point, they're healthier, and we always talk about going back to last season, even in this season, the Warriors have always seemed to have the Kings number. last year in that first round, the Warriors were able to knock out the Kings when they were that I think the 2 seed or something like I think they were the 2 seed and the
There,
Warriors beat
yeah.
them. Yeah, Stephen Curry had that crazy game, a bunch of big shots. So it just seems like the Warriors at this point kind of own the Kings or have had their number. And then you look at the Warriors, Stephen Curry, he's been playing a little bit better down the stretch. Klay Thompson, he's been in and out of the lineup, but as of lately, he's been a little more consistent. Draymond Green, you know what he gives you at this point in his career. So I think these guys have enough at this point to get past the Kings. Now that's a different story when we talk about them getting into the playoffs and actually trying to make a run. But when you look at the Warriors, they got the guys like Pajimski, you got Kaminga, you got Andrew Wiggins, Trace Jackson Davis offers a lot of size now. Chris Paul, he's coming off of the bench. So I think they got a lot more options, a lot more scoring opportunities, a lot more guys that can, you know, help you play winning basketball. GP2, Gary Payton II, he's back and healthy. So I think they're just at a better spot. Whereas when you look at the Kings, like, yeah, I really like Sabonis and Fox and what they're able to do. And I think those two guys can definitely give the Warriors some problems. But like, unless you get like a crazy game out of Keegan Murray, I'm not too sure who else you rely on that Kings roster to kind of help you give some offense. Now, if Malik Monk was there, I think him being that number three option, a scorer off of the bench, one of those guys that can come in and just any given night can give you 30 if he's hot from the field. So I think that's a big part. And then Kevin Herter, who up and down, inconsistent, but we all know how important spacing and shooting is, and that's someone that could, if he's on and like you mentioned in these one game scenarios, this all it takes is one game. If he's hot, he can definitely help you. So I just think the Warriors have a little more depth and are a little healthier at this point. But I think it's going to be a good game. But I just think the Warriors have a little too much at this point and overwhelm the Kings with some tough injuries. And I just like the Warriors here.
Yeah, I'm right with you. The Malik Monk injury that ended his season obviously being detrimental almost to the Kings. They had that six man off the bench that they could rely on. You mentioned the number two guy, uh, probably number three, behind Fox and Sabonis. On any given night, though, he could go off. He's a bucket getter. You lose him. Now your bench is in the question. You mentioned Keegan Murray spacing the floor, but you're gonna have to heavily rely on Keegan Murray. That's not really what you want. I think they could get it done if Fox and Sabonis both go crazy and they have a tremendous game, but it's gonna take a lot out of those two guys. You mentioned the
Mm-hmm.
Warriors, Chris Paul coming off the bench. He's still chasing that elusive ring he's been missing his whole career. So in a winner go home situation, I know he hasn't played well. Draymond Green, you mentioned the other day going 5 for 5 from three. It seems like second half of the season, he's been shooting the ball not only more, but more efficiently as well from the three, giving the Warriors, that floor spacing, a bucket when they need it. And Draymond's able to do that. You got Steph Curry, the greatest, not only shooter to ever see the game, but one of the best PGs in the league still, you know, at his age, being able to do what he's able to do. And, you know, Clay up and down season, he could get hot any given moment shooting that three ball as well. So there's a lot of factors that play into it. Could the Kings get a win? Yeah, but in this one, I like the Warriors with the matchup. I think that Malik Monk injury might just be too much and honestly, kind of derailed the Kings season uh late in it towards the back end of the season as well. So I'm gonna go with the Warriors here. I think we see, the Kings get bounced and we see a Lakers Warriors matchup everybody's been waiting for, the LeBron versus Curry. Must see TV, get your popcorn ready Friday night for that one. So it's gonna lead us to the East, man. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. The Miami Heat, man, they travel to Philadelphia, play in front of that tough Philly crowd, and play the Sixers with Embiid coming back late in the season. The Sixers have been giving the Heat problems all year, even in the regular season matchups with no Embiid. The Sixers found ways to get the wins against the Heat. Typical Heat fashion. Second half collapse has been sort of the story all year long. They were able to squeak out a few games late in the year because of Terry Rozier, who will not be playing due to a neck injury. Duncan Robinson looks like he'll be back on the court. K Love is available to play as well. Jimmy Butler, Bam, obviously gonna need those two guys to step up and, play off Jimmy. Is he getting activated tomorrow night? It's the big question. So I want to know, your take on this one.
I'm gonna kind of trail off of what you said right there and play off Jimmy, man. And until I see otherwise, I'm gonna pick the Heat in this matchup, man. It's tough, especially with the 76ers, with the Embiid injury and how things kind of fell. Maxey banged up towards the end of the season as well. But when you look at what those two guys are able to do when they're on the court together and fully healthy, I don't, it's tough to stop both of them. I don't know if there's a team out there that can really stop, like genuinely shut down both of those guys. But it's a little concerning. Embiid, a couple of games ago, towards the end of the season, went down with that injury in that Magic game, I believe. Came out, played after at halftime, so it seems to be, still a little banged up, still coming off of that torn meniscus. How well is that going to hold up? Will he be able to, be fully healthy and give you 100%? But even at this point, I think even if you get 80% of Joel Embiid, that's still better than what, like the entire NBA, majority of the NBA. So I think that's enough. But in terms of the Miami Heat, I think we see Jimmy Butler and a lot of things. I think it comes down to the playoffs. It's a mental game. We all know about Jimmy and the Sixers. That you chose to pay Tobias Harris over me. Like this is just one of those classic moments where Jimmy goes out, makes a statement, and we all question ourselves like, oh, like what was he doing this entire regular season? We saw him, making all the appearances, riding the horse in Miami, doing the commercials at the tennis matches, doing everything. But I think he locks in. Eric Spoelstra, arguably the best head coach in the NBA right now. He'll definitely scheme something up. And then in terms of health for the Heat, you mentioned Rozier was out, but this is arguably the healthiest this Miami Heat team has been in a very long time in terms of going into playoffs. You get Tyler Hero back; he's going to be playing, and we talked about it all last year throughout the playoffs. And then even when they made the little run a couple of years back where he got banged up, Tyler Hero. So it's like now you put that offense into the lineup, someone that can score the ball, shoot at a really high level. That's definitely going to help. And then you just mentioned all those other guys. You get the Caleb Martins, Duncan Robinson, Caleb, those guys, scrappy. They'll be able to add some offense and defense. Those guys play hard on both ends of the court. But you look at Jimmy Butler, you look at Bam Adebayo, those guys both have to step up here in the playoff. And I think in the playoffs, I think Eric Spoelstra does just enough. Throws a little zone out there, a little trap Embiid, try to get the ball out of his hands, make someone else besides Embiid and Maxey beat you. Because you look at that 76ers roster, whereas who do you go then? Is it, Tobias Harris? He hasn't had that good of a season. Kelly Oubre, we kind of know what he is at this point of his career, athletic energy player. Do we see a Kyle Lowry revenge game? That's another question mark there. But I'm going to roll that out at this point. I think it'll be a really good game. I think this could be out of all the playing games, I think this could be the closest one, and this could go either way. But I'm going to pick the Miami Heat, man. Like you said, do we see playoff Jimmy activated? Usually, if it's a playing game, I would say no. But since it's against the Sixers, and like I mentioned, that little backstory these teams have, Jimmy feeling like Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, they made their choice. They picked him over him. Didn't really like what was going on there. Still really good friends with Embiid. He was like the only player there that Jimmy said, had that dog in him that wanted to win like Jimmy. But this Heat team, you got a team full of dogs, and I think Eric Spoelstra has those guys ready. They know what time it is, and it's going to be on the road. It's going to be a tough game, but I think the Heat squeak it out and they get a really big win and basically just set the tone for the playoff Heat basketball.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth, the Tobias Harris over me. I think we saw that clip come up the other day. I got me fired up for the play, and I was a little worried, with Embiid being back. I think Kyle Lowry already had his revenge game in the regular
He did,
season.
yeah.
So, I'm kind of go away from that point. But uh, you mentioned Tyler Hero, his run a few years ago was the bubble finals, where he went down and he was kind of, you know, coming onto the scene as a young. I think he was 20 at the time, maybe a little older, even younger. He could have been like 19 at the time. It might have been one of his rookie years, if not sophomore season, where he was putting up 30 points in the playoffs and he went down with that injury. the Heat fell short against the Lakers. He went down last year in the playoffs, and they were really missing that late game bucket getter. They added Rozier this season, who is out, who is a, score at any moment type of player. They able to get Tyler Hero back, so maybe that offense is just enough. You mentioned it, what was Jimmy doing all season? We say it every playoffs. He comes with that energy, he comes with that dog in him. He definitely has a chip anytime he plays the Sixers. Obviously, him and Embiid are buddies, but I really need to see something Bam Adebayo, man. It's always inconsistency with him. One day he looks like one of the greatest centers in the league, if not top three on some days. He's able to knock down threes. We saw him earlier in the year knocking down some three balls. And then there's games where he's missing wide open 13 footers, baby floaters around the rim, and he can't buy a bucket. So Bam Adebayo in this playoffs, I want to see something from him. Obviously, it starts with the playing and moving on into a 7 game series, but I really got to see something out of him. Hero, I want to see him stay healthy. If he does, I'm very confident he'll be able to get buckets and enough to beat the 76ers with the help of those guys. Jimmy, you mentioned Caleb. Do we see, Caleb reemerge in the playoffs as he did last year in the Eastern Conference Finals, where arguably he should have been the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, but Jimmy obviously won it. You got the vets, K Love, you got the young guys, Triple J coming off the bench. Is he able to find, that form he had in the first half of the season here in the playoffs? Something to look out for. But for the Heat, I feel like they got enough. Duncan Robinson catch fire anytime. He's been shooting lights out, probably his best shooting scoring season overall, not only beyond the arc, but inside the paint. His bag has developed into a viable scorer all around the court. Obviously, defense has always been a question for him. If he gets in that Tyrese Maxey matchup, off a switch, pick and roll, whatever. But I think Spoelstra is definitely going to throw out some zone, classic Spo in the playoffs. He's going to, throw man at you, for a quarter. He's going to throw zone at you for two, and then he's going to switch it up. He's going to game plan for the Heat. First half has always been good for him. Don't fall too far behind. It's either they're blowing a team out in the first half or they're getting blown out. And either way, regardless, they're trying to claw their way back into a close game or they find themselves blowing a game, allowing another team to get into a close game and end up winning it. So for the Heat, it's about playing all 48 minutes, staying locked down. And I'm excited to see that Jimmy playoff run, man, for another year. Coming off the season last year, 8 seed, almost losing to the Bulls in the play-in and almost going home. I mean, that early on in the season to making the conference finals. So this Heat team, man, they just got to get one tomorrow on the road. Tough matchup, but I think they get it done. Jimmy and the crew. It's playoff Jimmy, man. As a Heat fan, I'd be doing a disservice picking against the Heat. So give me them. I'm expecting calling it Tyler Hero 30 ball. Think he comes back and proves something. So that's what I'm going for.
I like it, man. I think we're both on the same page for that matchup.
Um, then for the final playing game, we got I don't know why I'm not able to pull it up right now. We got the Hawks Bulls uh in Chicago. Obviously, Bulls without Zach LaVine. Last year, DeMar DeRozan, the daughter, was a storyline of the play-in tournament, being at the game and affecting the free throws. Who you got in this matchup?
I think, I mean, on paper, when you're looking at this is like throwaway matchup of the plan. Like, I mean, unless you're a fan of either one of these teams, you don't really care. But I think this would be a solid matchup. I'm gonna go with the Bulls here at home. You look at the Hawks, it's like they had so much upside, but they've been so inconsistent. They had the injuries. Trae Young missed a lot of the season. Although he played the last couple games in the regular season, worked back from that injury. But him and DeJounte Murray just don't really seem to work well on the court together. Jalen Johnson, I believe, went down with another injury, so I'm not so sure if he'll be playing. So you got some question marks there with the Hawks. But on the Bulls side, DeMar DeRozan, he's been playing really well as of late down the stretch. And then you look at guys like you got Alex Caruso, Kobe White, arguably most improved candidate. He's come in and been really, really big time for this Bulls team, especially offensively. He shot the ball really well, adding a lot of playmaking and creation for that team. And then you look at Drummond and Vooch down low, two serviceable big men that kind of, give you opposites side of the of the skill sets, but if you put them together, that's like a really good center. You got Drummond on the defense and then rebounding, and Vooch is more of, just a scorer. So you put those two guys together, I think they're solid. But I just think it comes down to, they're at home for the Bulls, and I think DeMar DeRozan steps up and has a really big game and kind of is the biggest star out of everyone here. I mean, I like Trae Young, I like DeJounte Murray, I like what the Hawks kind of got there, but they're a really young team, and outside of those two guys, like I mentioned, they don't really have much else. I just think the Bulls are at this point just the better team, especially with Trae Young shaky coming off of the injury. There's not too much, not too sure, how much the Hawks have there, and will this be the last time we see, Trae Young and Jonte Murray playing together, or Trae Young in the Hawks jersey? There's been some rumors about Young being traded, Spurs and Wemby, some rumors to LA. So we'll see this offseason. But yeah, I just think it was a really disappointing season for this Hawks team, and I think they get bounced here, and the Bulls get a comfortable win at home.
And I'm kind of right with you at this point. DeMar DeRozan playoff experience. He's been there in the league a long time, battled in the conference finals against the Heat for a lot of years in the, mid 2010s. He's been there, one of the best mid-range shooters, of his era. And I mean, you mentioned it with the Hawks. I'm almost speechless talking about him because I think I saw a stat. I think the Hawks are 600 when Trey or DeJounte plays when they're not both on the same court, but one of them
Yeah,
plays, and when they do play together, they're sub 500 team,
I saw that.
or
Yeah.
they were a 500 team when they're on the court, something like that. It
Hmm.
You mentioned Trey Young, he came back, he dropped 12 points, 12 assists, had a double-double, but I think they lost by like 20 plus points the last game of the regular season. They just, it's two uh ball handling point guards that really need the rock in their hands, and they're not sure what to do chemistry wise when they're both on the court at the same time. Even last year, a lot of injuries. They weren't on the court pretty much together at all. So it's it comes down to chemistry, what these guys have in the tank. I don't think the Hawks could get it done. I like the Bulls here, even though you mentioned if you're not a Hawks or a Bulls fan, it's kind of like, scratch this playing game. You almost don't want to watch it. But I think these two teams, it might be a tight game, 9:30 tomorrow night. It really is. Can the Hawks seem to find a groove all of a sudden with Trey and DeJounte? It would be surprising this late in the year if they can. But if they do, obviously they'd be a dangerous team, but definitely a disappointment of a season for the Hawks. When last year, Trey Young, I think it was just Trey Young in the playoffs last year, he almost single-handedly dismantled that Boston Celtics team in the first round. So
Yeah.
when they're both on the court, and then this year you see DeJounte, 50 points on 40 shots or whatever it was, or 40 points on 40 shots.
Hmm.
Uh, as soon as you throw them both on the court, it seems like, they go from all-star caliber just to role players almost when they're on the court together. So give me the Bulls, man. Chicago. I think they get it done for that playing game I think they were in that playing game last year is the 9-10 seed as well. I think they get it done once again this year. So I got the Bulls moving on. I mean, eventually play the 76ers and probably lose, but that's who I got in this one. Moving on to the playoff matchups that are already set, man. The first one we'll see Suns versus the T-Wolves. And a matchup, the big three of the Phoenix Suns heading into the season, looking to play this dangerous T-Wolves team led by the young Ant Edwards, been hooping all year. Who you like in this matchup?
I think this could be a really good one. I could see this going either way, man. I mean, you look at the Suns, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal. They got those three, really, really elite, high level scorers. All those guys are hitting their shots, and they're able to, create some really, really good offense. It's going to be hard to stop this team. But with that being said, I think I'm gonna pick the Timberwolves here, man. I got this as an Anthony Edwards coming out party. I mean, this entire season he's just been elevating his game. You know, especially since Cat's gone down and he's been that true number one guy. We saw the monster dunk against the Jazz. We saw the 50-point game in front of 50 Cent. Like, I mean, Anthony Edwards has pretty much done it all this season. Really elevated his game, especially coming from the FIBA where he was kind of the standout star for the USA team over this summer. That kind of just bled into this regular season, and he's playing at an elite level. And I think the main thing here for the Timberwolves is going to be their defense, man. You look at Anthony Edwards when he's able to lock in on the defensive side of the ball. He's showing some flashes, especially you look at that game against the Pacers. He got the game-winning block. He's like, that's the highest I've ever jumped. And Anthony Edwards, if he wants to lock in defensively, he can be a high-level perimeter defender. You look at Jalen McDaniels, what he brings to the defensive side of the ball. Not much there offensively, but he's a really good perimeter defender. And then working back, Karl Anthony Towns. I believe he played the last game or last couple games trying to get back completely healthy. But having him there with Rudy Gobert, I mean, Gobert probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year this season. What he's able to do in terms of deterrent shots, shot blocking, helping at the rim, it's just you can't really put it in words how important it is to that team defensively. They got a bunch of guys committed, buying in defensively, but I just think it comes down to Anthony Edwards is going to hit some big shots this series. Maybe hit a game winner, maybe hit a clutch shot down the road to give them a big win, give them the series lead. And I think the Suns, man, you want to talk about disappointing season. You got Kevin Durant, you got Devin Booker, you got Bradley Beal, but what they got to get all these guys, what they gave up, I think they lost just a little too much. When you look at that Nets trade, Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson, two key pieces, especially when they went on that championship run, added depth, added perimeter defense. They just lost a lot of guys, man. So if Booker, Durant, and Beal aren't having, elite level nights scoring the ball, I just think the defense is going to be a little too much from the Timberwolves, and I think we can see. I'm calling it right now, man. We see a crazy Anthony Edwards first kind of not welcome to the playoffs because I believe they played Nuggets last year in the first round, so that was like he's had a playoff experience, but first time on a big stage with real expectations, with real stuff around him now. Got Karl Anthony Towns, you got Rudy Gobert. This team is meshed defensively, real expectations, and on a real stage with some real hopes of going far and actually winning and competing as being one of the top teams in the West. I think Anthony Edwards lives up to it, and I think we see a big first round playoff performance for him. So I mean, it's not really an upset because the Wolves are the higher seed, but in terms of the name value and who the Suns have on their roster, I'm gonna go with the upset here, and I think the Timberwolves get it done. I think it's gonna be a really good series. It's gonna be a tough, competitive series, but like I mentioned, man, I think Anthony Edwards proves to be just at this point in his career one step above everyone else on the court. So I'm going Ant Man here, man.
No, I'm right with you. We've been on the same page sort of all this show, and I'm rocking with that. The Ant Edwards show, I think he's here, man. It's really Ant's league, especially in the West. There are rumors of a team, with the expansion moving to the East in the future. Could Ant be the face of the East, with Tatum and the Celtics competing in the Eastern Conference? We'll see, but I really like Ant Edwards here in this matchup. I mean, who's sort of gonna guard him from the Suns standpoint? 1 through 5, this not the Suns, but the T-Wolves sort of have matchups everywhere offensively. Obviously, the Suns and their offense is high powered, high scoring. D-Book's still, young in his prime compared to KD, Bradley Beal, both of them a little older. KD, obviously, Achilles injury, age catching up to him. We saw the D-Book KD show last year. That Beal, is that going to be enough here in these playoffs? It could be, man. It's a 7-game series. You got KD, championship caliber. D-Book's been there. Bradley Beal really hasn't played in big games since John Wall was over there in Washington together with him. So I know your favorite player, John Wall, giving him credit for his time in Washington with Brad Beal. Obviously, loving Brad Beal out of Florida in college, but I Ant sort of I keep saying it, man. He's one of the most exciting players to watch on the court. what he's able to do offensively. You said if he locks in defensively, he's a high motor player. He's going to lead this team. You had Carl Anthony Towns back, who used to be the leader of this team, and he's very capable of leading a team, scoring, rebounding, passing as a big man. He was sort of the mini Jokic before Jokic came into the league, being able to do it at every level offensively. Obviously, dialed back with Ant, age is coming, injuries, and Jokic just being a whole different caliber player than Cat is. But he's able to do it all. You mentioned Gobert, the two big men in the paint between Cat and him. People question that trade acquisition with Rudy Gobert at the time, and it's sort of he's won this DPOY. He's gonna get another one this year. I think it's too much. I think the Ant Edwards show is here. I think the T Wolves make a little run in the playoffs, and I think it could go 6 games. I think this series goes 6 games. I think that Suns offense, they just miss a step or two late in the series, and it gives enough for Ant Edwards to go crazy and really take off and show the league that, he's here. He's able to compete in the West with this T Wolves team that really outside him and Cat, there's no legit stars on that team offensively outside of those guys. So I think Ant Edwards makes a statement here. I think they get it done in 6 against the Suns. And maybe, is it time for the Suns who went all out for that big three? What are they gonna do next season? I think it's a serious question over there in Phoenix. Next series in the West we have set up, man. I think this one, on paper arguably one of the best matchups here in the playoffs. I mean, you got the Mavs heading up against the Clips. Uh, Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving versus Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. I mean, you got three of these guys who used to run the league. Kyrie is a young guy out of Cleveland. Spent some time over there in Boston, flip-flopping around. Seems like he's found a home in Dallas. Who do you have in this one?
Yeah, I completely agree with you in terms of this could be the best matchup. And, we all know the history of this matchup as well in the playoffs. Luka with, multiple big games, sending the Clippers home, hit that big shot somewhere on the court. Not going to mention where that shot was from, but it was a big shot. Some implications there. But yeah, this could go either way. I thought really long and hard about this because you got to like what you see from both teams as of late, the Mavericks a lot more. But I'm gonna pick the Clippers, man. I'm gonna believe in what I saw earlier in the season where they went on that, month or two run where they looked unstoppable. They looked like the best team in the league. They beat Denver, they beat the Timberwolves, they beat some really good teams. And the chemistry and what we saw from them, I think it's just gonna be a little too much for the Mavericks. If you get, a healthy Kawhi Leonard who has been resting a little bit down the stretch this end of the season, just got the nod to be the last person into the Olympic team. So playing with maybe a little more confidence, a little chip on his shoulder. He's on the USA team. Paul George has been a really good offensive player this year. And you know what he also brings defensively as well. He was shooting the ball really well this season. And if you get a fully bought in James Harden, Westbrook coming off the bench providing energy, Norm Powell, arguably sixth man of the year, another really good scorer off the bench, can get hot at any moment, has that playoff experience as well with Kawhi, one with him in Toronto. So I like what you have here for the Clippers. And I just think if they lock in defensively, because we talked about this in the last couple of podcasts and stuff, last couple of episodes, their defense has just been so bad. But if they're able to lock in defensively, get some stops, and I know this is probably, I mean, outside of the Denver Nuggets, asking someone to lock in against, Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving is probably the biggest task in the NBA. But if you want anybody to do it, you would want guys like Kawhi Leonard, like Paul George, even Westbrook, those guys that have that high energy that can bring length to the perimeter to at least try to make it as difficult as possible. But I mean, looking at the Mavericks, I can easily see them winning. They've, Luka making his late season MVP push. I know some people got him as the MVP. He's up there with Jokic now. What he's been able to do during this stretch of the season is just, damn near amazing, bro. Especially him playing with Kyrie, both of those guys being able to play off of each other. I know Luka earlier this season was like, they finally got me a center, with Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford, those guys in the paint playing, as that lob threat off of Luka, who's able to just pretty much create everything for his teammates is just super, super easy. Then you look at, they got the Tim Hardaway Jr.'s, the PJ Washington, those guys that can add some solid perimeter defense, and they can shoot the ball decent as well. So you want to see them get going. But I think the main pieces here for the Mavericks is Kyrie and Luka just continue to play, elite high level offense. Both continue to shoot the ball really well, score at high levels. This Mavs team can be really, really dangerous. And I feel a lot less confident in my pick than I do with the Timberwolves over the Suns. Maybe out of every single matchup that we're going to cover today, because I think this is going to be the closest one. Has a chance to be the best series, but I'm going to go with, the multiple veterans over there on the Clippers, and we saw the potential they had last season in the playoffs against the Suns before Kawhi went down, where they had Westbrook coming in giving energy. Now you had James Harden. If he's fully bought in, we saw him last year against the Celtics. What was that, game one? Or early in the playoffs against the Celtics where he had that really big game and he kind of melted and fizzled away in game seven. Well, now you got guys around him like Paul George, like Kawhi Leonard, like Westbrook who can give you energy off the bench that can kind of pick up that slack that Harden, inevitably always shows down the stretch in the playoffs. Westbrook had a really, really great series against the Suns last year. Paul George was able to score against the Suns as well. So give me a healthy Kawhi. They kind of been, saving him from the end of the season for this moment. I think that's going to be the game changer because also I believe he went down with that ACL against the Mavericks when Luka beat them in the bubble on that big playoff run. So give me a healthy Kawhi, a healthy Paul George, a bottom James Harden, and those guys off of the bench. I think it could be just a little too much for the Mavs to handle. It'll overwhelm them a little too much, but then again, at the end of the day, like I mentioned, man, you got Luka, you got Kyrie, arguably the best scoring duo, the best scoring backcourt in the league. It's going to be a good one. I feel like it's going to be a lot of points scored in both of these matchups. You're going to see some really good performances. Arguably the most star power that we're going to see in the playoffs in this round one matchup. A lot of guys that can go out there, get the buckets, have the big names, but I'm going to pick the Clippers here, man, in a very close, a very tight series. Probably go seven. I got the Clippers squeezing this one out.
Yeah, I mean, Luca and Kyrie, that duo, we know they could get buckets any given night, maybe even both of them going for 30. You never really know which one can go off, but it's for the Mavs, it's kind of like the Suns. What they did to get Kyrie, did they lose too many pieces in the process of, trying to get Kyrie into Dallas for that offense? Now, if both of them are clicking, obviously, I could see the Mavericks winning this series. Great matchup. You mentioned it. Could see it going seven. I like the Clippers here. Once again, we're on the same page. James Harden, I really need to see him step up. He struggled towards the back half, or not even back half, back quarter of the season with the Clippers. But you mentioned those guys, Kawhi, PG, Harden. You got Westbrook off the bench who when he was with the Lakers, people were saying he's washed, his career is over. Comes to the Clippers now, you're seeing some life out of Russ Westbrook. He's been able to hoop. He was in the conversation for that sixth man of the year. I really like the Clippers in this matchup. Kawhi, he's won a championship by himself over there in Toronto, the one and done. Now it was what 5 years ago now, but whatever it was,
Yeah, 2019.
Kawhi's able to get it done, man. He's healthy in these playoffs. He was missing last year with that knee, the ACL injury. You got Kawhi, you got PG. Um, I really think they could get it done for this Clippers team. They got too much, depth when it comes to scoring and offensive capabilities on any given night. Last year, you mentioned Harden sort of revived the scoring Harden, the Houston Harden that we saw for so many years on the 76ers last year when Embiid went down with that injury. People were questioning, does Harden still have it in the tank? Maybe ran out of gas due to his conditioning, whatever it was. I think the Clippers come to play and Kawhi's, he's sort of like a Jimmy Butler in a sense for me, being able to turn it up in the playoffs. He's obviously an all-star caliber player, but I think he's got a little more juice left in him and that he doesn't show in that regular season. I think it's too much. I think the Mavericks just they don't have enough pieces around Luka and Kyrie. You mentioned Derek Lively being able to, the lob threat at the rim, but Tim Hardaway Jr., he's a little pesty defender. He's had some bad moments in the playoffs in the past, and some knucklehead moments. Maybe he cleans those up. PJ Washington, good perimeter defender on the outside, able to, spot up, hit a couple shots. But I think the Clippers got too much. And you mentioned Norman Powell. He's been in the league for a while, had playoff experience before Kawhi with Toronto, championship caliber experience. He can get it going. He could score 20, in a blink of an eye. And it can really upset an opposing team, especially when you have those other four guys around him. If he's able to get the buckets going, it's a tough matchup. See it going seven. I like the Clippers here in this one. And I sort
The
of,
only
been with
Yeah,
them all
go
year.
ahead,
Go
finish.
ahead.
Yeah. The only pushback I will give to you is you kind of said they were like the Suns, and I get what you're saying in terms of like what they gave up to get Kyrie, but I think when you have someone like Luca who is playing like arguably as the best player in the world right now, or best player in the league, it kind of makes up for it. You know, maybe
Hmm.
you were expecting Kevin Durant to continue to play at that high level, or maybe you were expecting Devin Booker to take that, leap for the Suns and be, in the MVP race and be one of the top two, three players in the league. That just hasn't happened yet. Whereas with the Mavericks, when you have someone like Luca and what he's able to do on all three levels, scoring wise, and then you add in the playmaking, and then you add in, he's like 6'8", he has size, so you add in the rebounding as well. So I mean, that I can kind of understand. I can see you giving up more because Luca brings you so much. Whereas where you were the Suns coming into the season or coming before you traded Kevin Durant, before you traded for Durant, you had Devin Booker, who was a fringe, top 10 player, maybe pushing that top five, had the potential, you think, maybe to jump into the MVP combo, be one of the best in the league, but just not really there yet. Then you bring in Kevin Durant. Can he hold on to being one of those elite players in the league still? Can he still be that top player? And then Bradley Beal, you just wanted a really, really, really elite third option. When you look at Bradley Beal and you go through the third options, and Bradley Beal's your third option, that's an elite level third option in terms of scoring. So I think that's kind of what they hope for. But I think the most disappointing thing for the Suns is that Durant and Booker didn't really elevate and take that next step. Whereas when you have Luca and you bring in Kyrie, Luca was really good. Luca was, arguably in MVP talks last season. We saw him produce in the playoffs, and then he's gone above and beyond that as well this season. So I think Luca is the kind of the separator there in terms of the Suns and the Mavericks being similar. I get what you're saying. Like, give what they
Yeah.
gave up. They did give some pieces out. They saw some guys walk. They let Jalen Brunson walk. Then bring him back, and we see how he's playing. And we'll talk about him, within the next couple of weeks, the playoffs and stuff. But I just think right now the way Luka's playing, the level he's on, he's the only player I think right now in the league you can say is arguably up there with Jokic in terms of the impact he has on his team, what he brings to the team. I mean, Giannis is up there as well, but he's dealing with that injury and he doesn't bring the offensive creativity that those other guys bring to the table. So I agree with what you're saying, but I just think the key piece there is that Luka is just right now clearly better than Kevin Durant and Devin
Yeah.
Booker. So I think that kind of, justifies the Mavericks making that move and kind of going all in for Kyrie, unlike the Suns where those guys didn't really take that next step. But I get what you're saying. And
Yeah.
it's close, but yeah, I'm picking the Clippers too.
No, I agree with you. I think there is levels to those, two situations. Uh and I think it just I still think D Book could be that fringe top five player in the league. It's just how that
I do too.
situation's kind of panned out with KD, who is a scorer, and then you add Bradley Beal, you're taking away touches. I mean, he put up 70
Mm-hmm.
points and you're what was it, 70, 60?
Yeah,
D-Book
yeah,
put up
70. Yeah.
70. I mean, yeah, come on, man. He's a guy that could score at all three levels, post. He could finish at the rim. He could score, the pull-up middies, the three. But I agree, Luca is on a different level than those guys are, especially at this point in all three of their careers. So there
Mm-hmm.
definitely is. I would say there's levels to it for sure. Taking us to the East, man. I'm gonna start us off with sort of my two disappointing teams in the East, man. I got the Indiana Pacers and the Milwaukee Bucks. I want to hear your thoughts, man.
Well, I mean, mentioning this series, the first thing you got to mention is Giannis not being there, which is going to be really, really tough. I think he's expected to miss the entire series. Maybe if it goes 6 or 7, they try to get him back, but it's looking like he's definitely not going to be there for, at least the beginning, first couple games of this series. And that's tough, man. You look at this Bucks team, you look at this roster, you look at the front office, the coaching, and everything that's gone around with this team. We've touched on this Bucks team, a little bit throughout these last couple episodes and kind of how we feel on them. But I mean, outside of Giannis, what really are you getting now? Dame, we all know what Dame is at this point of his career. He's a smaller guard, doesn't really bring much on the defense side of the ball, not because he doesn't want to. It's just age and physical ability just doesn't let him be a really good defender like someone like Drew Holiday, who they had and they let it go. So no, Giannis is going to be killer, man. And I think the most important part looking at this series is I'm going to pick the Pacers. And when you look at this matchup, the Bucks are, I believe, the oldest roster in the league, and the Pacers are one of a younger roster, and they play with the fastest pace. They want to go up and down. Halliburton wants to grab the ball, push the pace. They got a bunch of guys that can get out there. They can run. A bunch of athletic dudes finish at the rim. They want to play fast. They want to go run and jump, score the ball really quick, play pesky defense, and get out on the break. Whereas you look at the Bucks, even when they had Giannis, they want to slow it down. They want to get that pick and roll going with Dame, let Dame get to his spots, let Giannis, work down low, and then maybe find a shooter off of that. So I think it can get really ugly. The Pacers also, I believe, have the series advantage over the Bucks this season. I think they beat them 3 out of 4 times as well. So showing that the Pacers have had their numbers, especially with Giannis out, I think it's going to be a lot tougher when you get those guys like Halliburton. He's so creative how he's able to get to his spots. You get him going to the paint now that there's no Giannis. Miles Turner, he's someone that can bring the ball out, stretch it, shoot a little bit, make it really tough on Brook Lopez, and then create some opportunities for those guys cutting back door, slashing as well. So without Giannis, it's going to be tough for this Bucks team. Even with Giannis, I thought this could be a really good matchup. It could go either way, but now that Giannis is out with just another brutal injury, I mean, especially going back last year, I know he came back against the Heat, and Jimmy Butler had playoff Jimmy, and he had all the big games, and even all those big shots he made, Giannis wasn't involved. He hit him on Drew Holiday and stuff like that. But Giannis not being there, you got to at least mention, even as a Heat fan, made a big difference for that Heat series and was kind of a big reason why the Heat won. Going back to this series, no, Giannis is going to be tough. What is it going to look like this offseason for that Bucks team if they get bounced by the Pacers in the first round, back-to-back first-round exits? Now, maybe you have an excuse. Giannis was injured, but if you look at everything this season, bringing in Doc Rivers, having a players-only meeting, defensively, still a lot of questions. Offensively, you're not really getting much from your guys. And then you look at the people that have that you let go, guys that have left Milwaukee. The 2 guards I'm thinking about in particular. You look at Drew Holiday; he's contributing to the best team in the league right now. One of the key pieces the Boston Celtics are so well. And I know you make fun of me. You say this is my guy, this and that. But looking at Grayson Allen on the Phoenix Suns, who you didn't mention, who's arguably been one of, if not the best shooter in the league this year. He's been that fourth guy to step up for the Suns when they needed someone. He shot the ball at a really, really high level, added a lot of spacing for them. So he's someone for that Phoenix Suns team that kind of added a little extra offense for them. And I mean, that's something this Bucks team is desperately missing. They need someone like Grayson Allen, or they definitely need someone like Drew Holiday that can guard the perimeter, that can help give some scoring as well. So I think the Bucks are in a really tough spot. Without Giannis, it's tough, man. I mean, you're kind of just relying on Dame and who at this point, Brook Lopez, Beasley, will he catch fire one game? Like you're starting to ask a lot from guys that are kind of on the end of their career. I think Crowder's still playing for them at this point. Like
Middleton.
it's tough, man. Yeah, Middleton, he's came back. He's looked a little healthy, but on the downwards of his career. Whereas you look at the Pacers, I think Halliburton, those young guys, Miles Turner, they want to get out. Look at Siakam, no Giannis. Maybe he's able to get it going down low in that post. When you got just Brook Lopez, you don't got to worry about Giannis coming over helping, or vice versa. I think it adds a lot more freedom, a lot more creativity, a lot more leeway for this high-powered, fast-paced Pacers offense. And I think a lot of people slept on Halliburton, man. He started off really hot. had the injury kind of slowed down. I think give him some time, let him get fully back healthy, let him get his confidence back in a little playoff run like this against the Bucks, who really have no one that can guard him. He's going to be able to have his way pretty much all playoff series. So I think we're able to see Halliburton have a bounce back series here where he gets some confidence back, he gets his shot going, able to create, able to play make, and yeah, I like the Pacers pretty much comfortably in this series, especially without Giannis. They just match up too good for them.
Yeah, so the Bucks this season 4-5 without Giannis on the court. Um, since he won his first MVP in 2019, the Bucks are sub 500 without Giannis on the court. You mentioned obviously I gave Grayson Allen his flowers earlier in the season. Just want to put that out there. He's your favorite player because you take plays from him. So, whether you're a dirty player and pick up basketball or not, it's another debate off camp. But whatever it is, man, the Bucks, they're gonna need Dame time to turn his watch back. Like that's the only way for the Bucks at this point is they're gonna need, Portland Dame to step up, logo Dame to hit some big shots, play like the Dame that we know he can be. Haven't seen it this season. No timetable for Giannis. That's tough. Doc really doesn't want to comment on it. Are the Bucks better without Doc? Are they worse with Doc? You really don't know. It was so early on in the season when Doc became the head coach and the turmoil that's gone on in Milwaukee hasn't been good buzz around the Bucks whatsoever. Last year, Budenholzer, former coach of the year, he gets fired after the first round exit to playoff. Jimmy, I didn't really, think it was too much on him. I mean, he had Brooke Lopez set up in the right situations last year, hitting big shots against the Heat. Seemed like Brooke Lopez couldn't be stopped, and it took Jimmy 50 points to beat the Bucks that game. I mean, there's
Mm,
nothing you could do coaching wise. You put Drew on him. You put what Middleton. You want to make Giannis guard Jimmy. I'm sure, but then you're leaving size. Brooke Lopez is out the paint. You're leaving the paint open for other players. Go attack the rim. Maybe he could have made that adjustment, putting Giannis on Jimmy. He was upset at that, why he wasn't guarding Jimmy the whole series, especially after he went crazy. But uh, the Pacers also, you mentioned their hot start with, Halliburton emerging as a quote unquote superstar into the league. Kind of expected them to be a little bit better at this point in the season. You mentioned the injury, the post All-Star slump. Halliburton was sort of digging himself out of it currently towards the back end of the season. I have them, winning this matchup against the Bucks. I don't think the Bucks could get it done. Too many injuries, too many question marks. Uh, a lot of things to be discussed this offseason for Milwaukee, I think, no doubt.
yeah.
So is Giannis in question? I mean, 39 and 40 without him since that 2019 MVP, 2018-19 MVP. I think it's tough. The last finals matchup, man, we got the Orlando Magic. They're traveling to play the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I think this is going to be a good matchup over here in the East. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm gonna pick the Magic in this one, and just simply because defensively they're one of the best teams, and I like what they bring defensively. And for the Cavs, man, it seems like they've just been on a slow, steady decline, man. So I mean, Donovan Mitchell, he's been banged up, fighting multiple injuries. Darius Garland banged up as well. He's come back, trying to get him fully healthy. Mobley, it kind of is what he is at this point. Jared Allen's been low key like their only consistent healthy player this season. So I think there is some question marks there from the Cavs. They cooled off a bit. And the Magic, I just like what they have. We talked about the Magic last episode, man. They got a lot of scrappy young guys. And then it just comes down to who can be the best player. And I think Paolo Banchero can definitely take over. Maybe we see something like a Halliburton or Anthony Edwards where, these young guys kind of cement themselves as to be, stars of the league. And you see a really good playoff series here for Paulo. But I mean, I just got a lot of question marks from the Mavs offensively, especially down the stretch in crunch time. Like they don't really know who else to go to besides Paulo. No one else that can really create their own offense. Bron's had an off season this year, shooting the ball and scoring. So you like to see him get back on track. Markel Fultz, Jalen Suggs, those are more, energy guys, secondary players. So in terms of creativity, ball handling on offense, I think the Cavs could have the edge there a little bit when you look at Darius Garland, you look at Donovan Mitchell, what those guys are able to create. But I just think defensively, the Magic are locked in. Jalen Suggs is going to have, I talked about how much I like him, how he's one of those scrappy players that, lead to a lot of playoff success. So I think he can make a few big plays down the stretch for them. But I just believe in this Magic's defense, and then ultimately Paulo stepping up, arguably being the best player in this series, taking that next step. But yeah, I think this is going to be one of those series where it's a grind them out, low scoring game. You don't really see too many flashy plays, but it's going to be really good basketball, like you mentioned. I think both of these teams can play each other very well. It's going to be a good series, but I'm going to stick it out and I'm going to pick the Magic in a close one in this series.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be tough for the Cavs. They've had that second half decline, injuries really picked up. I asked you, I think a few weeks ago, do we see the Magic win their first playoff series? And I think it was 20 years. And I think, they get a good matchup. They get a banged up Cavs team. They're in question, Donovan Mitchell's future over there. Is it Garland? Is it Mitchell? Darius Garland was emerging as a superstar before, you know, uh, Donovan got there. So I don't think the Cavs want to move off Garland. Do they move off one of these big men, Mobley or Jared Allen? Which one do they go? I think there's going to be some serious talks over there in Cleveland with their personnel. I think, if not one, two of those players probably go this offseason, whether via, you know, trade. I just can't see them keeping that core around uh, for another season. They've had some good runs, but really haven't gotten over, after the regular season, haven't gotten past that next step in the postseason. So I like the Magic here. You mentioned Banchero. You mentioned your guy, Jalen Suggs, Markel Fultz, Franz. I think this is a young, exciting team. I think they're able to squeak it out against the Cavs. Now they could. Donovan Mitchell, he's had that playoff experience, that one man wrecking crew in the past with the Utah Jazz.
That is
Could he
true.
win this series, muscle it up, play through injury, beat a young, inexperienced Magic team? 100%. But I'm leaning towards the Magic in this one. I think they're the more exciting team to watch. Definitely, not really known for basketball in Orlando since the Dwight Howard era. It could give, something to talk about in that area. Cleveland, they're dying for some playoff success, but I don't see this core of players being able to put together a run. They're able to muscle out a series win. I think it's going to take everything from those two guards between Garland and Mitchell, and it really isn't longevity. I see it going 50-50, but I'm gonna lean towards the Magic in this one for sure.
Yeah, and I think the Magic have the size, they have the length. You mentioned Jonathan Isaac. Defensively, they got some bodies to throw, some longer defenders to throw at those guards that can make their lives a little tough. So yeah, I think that'll definitely cause some trouble on the perimeter there for the Cavs.
Yeah, and that's gonna wrap up, our current playoff talk matchups along with the play-in as well, man. You got any other things, comments, takes, anything like that?
No, man, playoff basketball. I think the Lakers game already started. Got to see how that's going.
Oh yeah.
I already put my picks in. Yeah, so we'll see.
Who you took Lake Show money line? Or you took
I did. Yeah,
points?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna take -1 point. There's really no value in that.
Hell's up 50 seconds left in the first. So we'll see. Go to go episode 86, man. Go to go pod, TikTok, go to go YouTube, Apple, Spotify, all of that streaming wise, man. And until next week, we'll be back with, the full NBA postseason breakdown, what's going on that point in time as well. NFL draft next Thursday. Obviously, we did our mock draft a few weeks ago. Talks of JJ maybe going 5 with the trade up for the Vikings instead of that 4 pick. I've been seeing that a lot. We'll see. We'll discuss, post draft talk as well after that concludes next week as well. Until then, man, we'll be back with another episode next week, man. Peace.